first of all, I'm Jennie Johnson. I'm a 50-year-old founder of a tech ed business. I never thought I'd be saying that when I was 50. It's my second time round being a founder, so I'm going to share, because I've been asked to talk about leading with purpose. My leadership journey isn't just in the tech space, it's in a wider space than that. So I just thought I'd share my key learnings during the time of being a founder in both of my businesses. So the EdTech business I've founded is called My First 5 Years. We're going to come back to what that is, but in a nutshell, it's a child development app for parents. And the reason I've written that is that I have 20 years experience running a childcare group, which I founded in 2003. That childcare group is called Kids Aloud, and it's one of the sort of high-quality providers in the region. And I have to say that the majority of my sort of leadership knowledge has come from founding that first company. But everything I learned from founding that first company has been transferable to the EdTech space. So main learnings of running a business or leading with purpose is that it is all about the team. And I found that out the hard way. EdTech will probably end up being around 30 colleagues, of which we have 14 at the moment. So for me, that's a much easier business to run than my previous business. My previous business, we had 500 colleagues looking after 2,000 children a week. And learning the hard way that it's all about the team is not great. So I'll share with you my moment of realization that I needed to work much, much harder at being clear about the expectations that I had as a leader of a business back in the nursery example, which was that we'd opened our second setting. So when I just had the one setting, it was really easy to be present, to see what was going on, to have an immediate opinion and an immediate impact. But when we opened our second setting, I was then spreading my time over two, and all of a sudden you realise that you've not got that control that you used to have before. We had a young child dropped off for breakfast, and Mum had arrived at 9:05 in the morning. Now, that's absolutely fine. The child should have been given breakfast. But the colleague took it upon themselves to tell Mum that breakfast was over, it finished at 9 o'clock, the pots had been cleared away, and the child would have to wait till lunch. Now, that's not great, is it? Any of you that are a mum and have a young child know that if you'd have been running late that morning, not had a chance to give your kiddie breakfast, and your nursery had said they wouldn't give your kiddie breakfast, you'd be pretty annoyed, and rightly so. So this mum picked up the phone to me because the other thing I did as a leader was that absolutely everybody in the business, whether it was the customer or the colleague, had my mobile phone number. Now, you can only do that if you're confident that you're doing something well, otherwise you'd be inundated. But the mum rang me and said, "You sold me the dream, you said it was going to be like this, and this is what I've experienced this morning." Now, I was devastated. Obviously, the first thing I did was fix the problem. The child got breakfast. But the next thing I did was reflect on how on earth that had happened in my business. When I know that the answer should have been yes, why didn't the colleague know that the answer should have been yes? And this is all about, for me, leadership and being really, really clear about what your values are. So it's not okay that you know, as a leader in the business, it's not okay for it just to be in your head and presume that by some sort of magic telepathy, the colleagues will know. You have to be really, really, really clear about what your values are and what you expect of your team, and what your team can expect of you as well. Because as a leader, I very much feel I am there to serve my team. We operate quite an upside-down model where the most important people in our business are the people doing the frontline work. And actually, as the chief exec, my job is to listen and to create an environment where they can thrive and be amazing. So that totally turned on my head how we recruited. We recruited for attitude, and we trained for knowledge. And that was a complete 360 of what we were doing before. Is it a 180? If I did a 360, I'd be back to the beginning. It was a complete 180, because prior to that, any job advert you'd have seen would have said, we want somebody that's qualified to do the job. It would have been a level 3 nursery nurse, and that was the main priority for us, that we could tick the box that they were qualified. When we completely turned it on its head, all our adverts talked about what we were looking for, the Mr. or the Mrs. Right, and what they looked like. And our recruitment process was all about attitude and the fact that knowledge could come later. The other massive thing I learned as a leader is it's really, really important to deal with toxic colleagues. No matter how brilliant they are, if they are your best performer as regards sales or, write the best code, but they're toxic and they're not playing the game, they're not a team player, they're not living and breathing your values, it's all going to go wrong if you just keep making excuses because they turn out the best work or they hit the best sales. Because nobody else is going to live and breathe those values if your top performer could get away with it. And we had to deal with some really tough issues. We had colleagues that could really turn it on for the parents in the morning when they'd been dropped off, when parents were dropping off the children. So they were sort of parents' favourite. But then when parents had gone, they weren't performing. They weren't doing what we were expecting of them, what they needed to be doing. They weren't pulling the weight as a team. And every now and again, we had to let somebody go if we couldn't turn them around. And when they're really popular with the parents and they're not happy with you, and you can't turn around and say, yeah, but they were a bit shit when the door was closed and you'd gone to work. So for me, having those consistent values and dealing with issues, no matter how tough they are, is really, really important. Again, as a leader, I am really authentic in my business. And everybody, it's not as unusual now because I think everybody demands and expects flexible working, and rightly so. My team is predominantly female. We have 14 colleagues right now, 12 women, 2 guys. And we're very loud and proud about, going to sports days or having to pick kiddies up from school or doing the school run. We're not hiding, we're not masking the things that we need to do at home as well. We're being truthful and authentic about it. And I think that's really important. I call it not being superwoman. I think there's far too many successful women that stand up and make it look easy. And it isn't true. Anybody that stands up and says they've got it all, that life is sweet and life is easy and their business is a success and they're doing amazing at home and the kids are thriving, I don't think they're sharing their real situation. And I think that as successful women, when we stand up and make our journey look easy, it does a disservice to everybody else that's on that journey, that's struggling. So I can hold my hands up and say, it's hard. I work harder than I should. I want to have a work-life balance. And I would say in my last business, because I had my last business for 17 years, probably about 14 years in, I really prioritized work-life balance because my business had grown to a scale where I could get an amazing team around me, and I eventually moved to a 3-day week. How amazing is that? But in my new business, it's just relentless. I'm back to a 5-day week. I'm working all the hours God sends. It's not something that we can keep going forever. And I'm not trying to say, isn't it brilliant how busy my diary is? It's just the reality, I believe, in my personal view, having done it twice, that there's a stage in a startup journey where you just have to accept you're going to have to graft. And your work-life balance will probably be a little bit out of kilter. I've learned to live with that, though, and not feel guilty about it. And I'll share with you how. I think it's just reframing thinking and reframing how you talk to yourself. One of the panelists before was saying, be kind to yourself, and I can't agree more. If we talk to our friends how we talk to ourselves, we wouldn't have any friends. So we do need to be kinder to ourselves. But I've reframed my busyness. I used to say, I'm juggling loads of balls and I'm dropping them. I'm dropping some of them. I now say, I'm juggling loads of balls, but I'm going to decide to put this one down for a bit because right now the priority needs to be this. And the down that I usually put down is maybe my friends, my socializing, sometimes maybe my home life, always try and prioritise my kids where I can. I just think that that time that we have with our children is so, so precious. But at the end of the day, sometimes I do have to miss something important of theirs as well. And I've stopped feeling guilty about it. And I'd like to think, I've got 3 girls. One's 24, one's 20, one's 11. I would like to think they think the mum is a good role model, and that every now and again when I let them down, that they understand why, and I'm authentic with them as well. So a few things about creating a culture that's a great place to work. I just want to share it with you because I think it's so easy to do. So listening is really important, and being nice to people is really important. So if you think about it, if the surveys say that when people leave a company because they're dissatisfied, it might not necessarily be because they don't like the chief exec, or even that they don't like the values of the business. It's most likely to be their direct line manager that is causing them the dissatisfaction that means they'll leave. So any of us on our journey that begin to manage, lead people, be a good leader. You are having a massive impact on people's lives. And you want to go home, don't you, and feel that you've done a good day's work and that you've been kind to your team and that you've been a good role model and that you've been authentic. So don't underestimate your impact as a leader. And we don't have to be unpleasant just because we're, that people are reporting to us. We don't have to make demands. We don't have to be unreasonable. We just need to be clear. Have high expectations, yes, but then model those high expectations yourself. So one of my strategies that worked really, really well was that I used to have this thing called Lunch with Jennie. So I was the chief exec of the business. We had around 500 colleagues. And I wanted to make sure that everybody felt they had my ear. Because even though everybody had my mobile phone, it takes a lot of bravery for someone to pick up the phone and ring the boss. No matter how nice the boss is, you're still the boss, and there's a barrier. It's hard to close down. So my lunch with Jennie used to ask the same 3 questions. And I asked these 3 questions every week for years. And over the time, every colleague got to come for lunch. And the 3 questions were dead simple. You could obviously think about what your own 3 questions could be. What can I do to make the business a better place for you to work? Because I want you to love your work, because I know that if you're happy, you will perform better. My second question was, what can I do, what can we do to make this a better place for our customers? Because, of course, the customers matter. But I always made it clear that they matter just as much as the customers. And then my last one, which always made people smile a bit and squirm a bit, was, do I ask you to do anything stupid? Because we often do as leaders. We sit there in our ivory towers thinking this policy is great or this way of doing things is great, but actually the people doing the job know what's great. And that used to get some really fascinating responses. And what we do then on the back of that is just a really simple, you've said, we've done. So listening to people about how they can best perform their role and creating an environment in which they can thrive. So all of those tips really helped me create an amazing business. I'm going to be loud and proud about it. Kids Aloud was an amazing business. We did net promoter scores twice a year to our customers, and we were world class. We did net promoter scores to our colleagues twice a year, and we were world class. There was a league table created independently to say what the best childcare groups were in the UK, and we were number 1. And I was so proud of our achievements. We did what we did really, really well. But it also nearly broke me, because running a childcare business is not for the faint-hearted. It's really full on. It's very regulated. A lot of things are out of your control. And I woke up one day, or I got halfway through a day, realizing I was done. Couldn't do it anymore. It was going to break me. So I sold my business, which was a big decision to make, and the colleagues I don't think have ever quite forgiven me for it. But I retired. And I was meant to stay retired until I had my new idea for my edtech company. And it's a really simple idea. Just tell me when to shut up, because I've lost track of time. Yeah? Am I all right for now? Literally just say, you're done. So I was a year in, and I'll just give you a really quick synopsis of the story. A year in, I met somebody I'd worked with during the Kids Aloud days, and in Didsbury where I live, there's a famous chippy, and outside the chippy is a chippy wall, and that became the go-to place in lockdown to meet your mates. And you grab a coffee, you'd sit 2 meters apart, and you'd catch up. So I was chatting to Chris, and he's like, what are you doing with your life? And I'm like, I'm retired, Chris, told you I was retired. And he's like, yeah, but what are you really doing with your life? And I was like, I'm retired, Chris, I've told you, and I'm never going back to work. So he's like, yeah, everybody that knows you knows that's not true. And within 48 hours of that conversation, I'd had the idea for my new app. The idea was sort of a lockdown idea, really, which was that a family member sent a video of a child, a 4-month-old child that we'd not met yet, so we were keeping up in the family WhatsApp group with what was going on, and I saw this child grasping for something, and I know that's a massive milestone in children's development. Mum didn't know that. Mum just thought it was a cute video. I picked up the phone to Mum and I said, I just thought you'd like to know what I'm seeing in that video. And I explained the milestone and I explained why it was so important and what it would lead to later, which is basically becoming an accomplished writer. You can't become an accomplished writer if you don't have strong hands. So we had that conversation and Mum was like, oh my goodness, now I can see that, I feel amazing, I know my child's progressing. It just gave Mum loads of comfort that something she hadn't recognised as learning was learning. So I went to bed, didn't think anything more of it. This is all true. Woke up at 6 o'clock in the morning, bolt upright, going, oh my God, if I could instill that knowledge into every parent, wouldn't they have a more joyful, less anxious first 5 years of life with their child? And I had a fully formed idea for the app, which is this one, which is marveling in the moments, not just the milestones. And what that's all about is that if I say to most parents, tell me a dozen milestones, you'll think about things like walking, crawling, potty training, weaning, the big stuff. And because most parents don't understand all the little steps it takes to get to the big stuff, they rush to get there without really consolidating all the little things that get you there. So that's what our app's all about. It's about passing our knowledge onto parents so it's literally in your pocket in a timely way. But do you know what? Tech is a scary new place, and I'm on a very, very, very steep learning curve. You don't think you hear of many female founders anyway in tech, which needs to change, but I'm sure not many of them are 50 with absolutely no experience in tech. But I am expert in my field, so that's all right. So I have a co-founder. For me, that was important. In both businesses, I've always had a co-founder. I've always approached someone with the idea and say, what do you think? Should we do this together? So I've got an amazing co-founder called Alistair Bryce Clegg, who is also grounded in the early years. And we've set about using all our knowledge of leading great businesses, because we're both second-time around founders, and bringing that into our new business. So, a couple of little things to pass over. Is it still all right, or do you want me to? 1 minute, wrap it up? Wrap it up. Well, why don't we just go to Q&A? Yeah, because the leadership stuff, which is the key thing you wanted me to talk about, we've done that. And I guess the key message I'd want to say is that the skills, leadership skills, are transferable anywhere. There's not just tech leadership skills. Leadership skills are applicable across all businesses. And for me, it is about being kind, it is about listening, it's about having high expectations and working with your team to create that environment that people can thrive.